And before you go on, John, somebody to add to that question, somebody asked, what would you advise your younger self, your 20-year-old self? What are some of what you would call missed opportunities that you might do differently if you could?
Oh, I've had several missed opportunities, and at the risk of contradicting what I have just said, I was very lucky as a young banker when I came back to Kenya, not to buy a flat pretty cheaply with bank debt, and quite frankly, the flat was not costing me that much. And I listened to a real estate agent who told me that the property in Westlands would all be valueless in the year 2000 because that's when all the leaseholds were expiring. So I sold my flat, and I still see it very nicely done up, very nicely located on off Raptor Road. And very, very valuable. And I kick myself, just like I kicked myself that in London when I was working in London while others were busy gathering this or that kind of asset. I was still in my father's house and living very well. So I didn't buy a flat. And one thing I did for my son, when he started working in London, was to help him buy a flat as a fast. So yes, that is at the risk of contradicting what I've said, except that my son bought his flat as an investment, not to go and live in. There are other things I have regretted in my younger life. As I said before, I've had several businesses go down in my hands. And the one I truly regret the most is the fact that in 1994, a group of us, myself from Citibank, a Ghanaian who had been working for a major merchant bank in London called Warburg, now UBS, and a Zambian who had been working with me at Citibank and then at HSBC, an American who had also done the same Citibank and HSBC, and a Palestinian who had also done the same. We came together and formed Africa's first Black-owned investment bank. In fact, Irene, you'll be interested. I don't think I've ever told you this, but we did the first Black empowerment deal in South Africa for a man you will recall from your days called Nzi Kumalo. And we did well, we did very well, but we were all seriously alpha males and couldn't let one of us be the leader. That came crashing down. We made lots and lots of money and spent that lots and lots of money spectacularly lavishly. So ours was a spectacular crash. And I wish it hadn't. I wish we had more patience, because what we did in Loita, which was what it was called, has spawned every single innovation and innovator in financial services in Kenya. You name it, you name any sector, and you will find people who either worked for us in Loita or were clients of us in Loita or copied us, your Old Mutuals, your Genesises, your Pine Bridges, copied us, your Stanbics, and went on to make lots and lots of money. So lack of patience, lack of staying power is something I regret. But on the other hand, I can stand here and look at the landscape and say, all these I helped create, and I'm quite proud of that. Next.
Wow, that's really great to hear that, Mr. Ngumi, because for some of us who have also been in the financial service industry, we've looked up to you. We know what you did with Loita, and very ambitious. In fact, that ties to the next question, really around advisory services. Mm-hmm. So the person is asking, how advisable is it to set up an advisory service firm, say in legal or risk or financial advisory, in a year of elections, right? So 2022 is the year of elections in Kenya. Is it advisable to be a startup owner in advisory services at this time?
I think
what are your timing setting up a business?
The answer, I have two answers to that. One, there is never a good time to set up a business or a bad time to set it up. I wouldn't really look at the electoral timeline, except insofar as it directly affects you. But number two, and I'll speak with
sorry, John, could you get to the middle of the screen? You're kind of cut halfway through. We can't see.
That's because I'm trying to think. My second answer is that, and I'm speaking from my experiences in financial advisory, is that if you want to get into financial advisory and do the sort of things I was doing as a banker, as an investment banker, then either be very rich, have a very rich backer, or stay out. It's one of the most unrewarding activities I know, at least in the financial space, not because it is not exciting, not because it is not intellectually rewarding, but because clients in Kenya, with the exception of your large companies, clients in Kenya, in my bitter experience, have a real challenge in accepting that advisory services in intellectual capital has a return. So they would more than happily pay a lawyer, because lawyers get them out of trouble, or show them how to get into trouble and stay out of trouble, or accountants or whoever. But when it comes to structuring deals, I'm now talking with my investment banking hat on, people expect advice to be free. And that's why the most successful firms in advisory are either your consultants who have a brand name, or your banks who also have a brand name and have capital. So anybody wanting to become the next hotshot financial advisor in town, I suggest you get yourself a very good backer. Otherwise, you will be sorely disappointed. They will praise you to high heavens, but they will keep their wallets firmly shut.
And before you go on to the next one, I want to ask John, this is, well, a tough question, but one that must be asked. Corruption in this country, and not just by government, but perhaps at every level. Is it so ingrained in us that we can't get out of it? And why do we choose corruption as it's the only way that we can advance, that we can get ahead? What makes us resort to corruption without even seeming to fight it, like it's a first resort, a last resort?
Why did you call it a tough question? It is something we discuss every day, and anybody who is unwilling to confront its reality is kidding himself. Now, we or herself. We read all these studies where we read about it. We read about public sector corruption. For heaven's sake, not only did I get into the belly of the beast, but I got accused of very many things. So I know it firsthand. I've seen it and have been in monumental battles with it. Why are we corrupt? There was an American who was once asked why he robbed banks. And his answer was very, very telling, because that's where the money is. You see, we have made easy money. We have made using public office. We have glamorous, rewarding. We know that if you have lots of money, you will buy the biggest lawyers, the toughest lawyers to keep you out of trouble. We know that with loads of money, you will get all the girls, all the glamour. You will have all the newspapers fawning over you. Hell, we even have examples as recent as last month of somebody with a pending case of corruption elected an MP. So why is anybody surprised that we have glamorized it? Since nobody's gone to jail, you can count on the fingers of two hands how many senior government officials have gone to jail for corruption, and you can count on the fingers of one hand how many senior private sector people who have corrupted government people have gone to jail. It's a rational calculation. You make money. It is rewarding. So why is anybody surprised that people are willing to engage in corruption? Because it pays. That's where the money is. And that is something that has happened in human nature all the time. When that if something is easy, or in a rational cost, benefit, pain, pleasure perspective, if there's always pleasure and always benefit, of course people will go that direction. So I don't see it as a complicated question. It is human beings doing exactly what human beings have always done, seeking pleasure and taking the easiest way out. And if the easy way out is to be in control of public resources, if the easiest way out is to steal whole loads of money meant for projects, whether or not they are infrastructure or health or school or anything of the kind, if there is no social cost, in fact, that if I go to church or some function, I will always be shown to the front, and if I arrive in a big shiny new Lexus or whatever it is I'm driving, or my helicopter or whatever, I will be the object of admiration and so on. Why is anybody surprised? So until that is broken, there's nothing ingrained about it. And I hate that word. It's that people use all the time. It is not ingrained in us. It is that it has been made to pay. So when you stop making it pay, you will find people looking to do other things. You know, I remember reading a lot about how everybody at one stage wanted to be a court clerk in colonial Kenya, and even in the immediate post-colonial Kenya. Why did they want to be court clerks? Because court clerks were in control of court files. Court clerks were also, in a sense, interpreters to the British magistrates. Court clerks could sway the way, and therefore being a court clerk was a very easy way of making easy money. What's the difference between that and wanting to be a procurement head somewhere? Why? I don't know whether it's still true, but 2-3 years ago, I was startled, and then not so startled, to read a statistic that say that supply chain management, which is the fancy word for procurement, supply chain management was the single most popular course in our public universities. Why? Because they've all seen that procurement leads to money. So I don't think it is ingrained. I think we have given abundant signal and evidence that it pays, and human nature will go towards that without exception.
So are we ever going to get tired of this? Will it ever come to a head? Will it ever be that, you know, the masses get tired of corruption and decide to do things differently? And what's the worst could happen if it does?
I detect some despair in your question. Let me answer it indirectly. The 2 or 3 generations before us, our grandparents, great-grandparents would never have believed that we would be doing what we are doing today. It seemed completely written in stone. It seemed, to use your word, ingrained in us, that we were forever fated to be hewers of wood and drawers. He was hewers of wood and drawers of water, as the Bible puts it, working for the white man forever and ever and a day. It changed. So I have to stand on the side of the optimists and say that it will change. I don't know how it will change, but I remember being in college and one of my tutors, an American, and a senior American diplomat, was absolutely convinced, and this is now in the 70s, that the Soviet Union was never going to change, that the Cold War would never end. And we know what happened, and we know what's happening now. So be hopeful. I think that one of the things I like to impart to the young is that it can change. I remember my grandfather, who was a Mau Mau detainee, telling me that a lot of his village mates could not believe that you could take on a white man, until he went to fight in the Second World War. He was in Ethiopia, in Abyssinia, as it was then called, and then in Burma. And that really opened their eyes. So stay hopeful. It will change. I don't know what will change it, but it will change.
Dr. Michael, you have a question, and I take it you don't agree with what John said. Michael Hawkins? Michael, could you ask John the question that you've put on the chat?
Thank you, Irene. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, good, actually. I have a number of questions. John, you're very eloquent. I congratulate you for that. But you've been eloquent in describing the situation.
Did we lose him?
I think we have. So you may as well read the good question.
And so he says that he doesn't accept your analysis that people are corrupt simply for the sake of being corrupt and the incentive of money, that there must be more to it. And so Michael, are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had some problem here. Yes, I think John certainly knows the situation, but he's not really coming up with any solutions. And I think that's urgently needed for your country. And I think you have to start at the grassroots. You have to work from the bottom up and not from the top down. So my question is, John, what do you think of that, and how best to go about that? I have a number of ideas, but I think, John, given your experience, I would really like you to jump into that. The thing is that corruption is such a curse in your country, and it's really holding you back in many, many, many ways. I don't want to go into them all. However, you need to grasp it very, very quickly. And I think you have to start at the grassroots level, where you have to say no right from the beginning. John, over to you, and thank you very much. I'm sorry to be a little bit aggressive, but I don't have too much time here. Thank you.
Michael, am I wrong? Did we have weren't we also sparring partners at the talk I gave to Gathiaka country?
It's quite possible, John, because right. I'm also a member of there too. And yes, my questions haven't changed. Sorry, John.
that's why I recalled you.
I'm so sorry.
that's why I recalled you.
I'm glad you're here too. Thank you very much, John. Good job, man.
Let me start by posing some questions to myself and trying to answer them. In 2003, and this is something that I know you may have read about, but I will still repeat it as part of my efforts to address Michael's challenge. In 2003, early 2003, following the election and assumption to the presidency of Mwai Kibaki, we were aggressively anti-corruption. The people truly believed, and they stopped policemen, they stopped administrators, they marched corrupt policemen to police stations, so to speak. The Eric Wainaina's song castigating corruption, ya kitu kidogo, was up there in the charts, and we truly believed that a new dawn had come. We were very quickly disappointed. So Michael, if I throw this back to you, why did we believe? Because, and this may come across as a bit, shall we say, not very politically correct, because we are a very hierarchical society, because we follow our leaders. And our leaders in the campaign had given us enormous hope that should they win, corruption would be a thing of the past. So that seemingly spontaneous eruption of citizens wishing to tackle the corruption dragon head on was not as spontaneous as it seems. It was an eruption that was stoked from the top and burst into flames. I'm trying to find an elegant way of saying, of asking myself, arising from your question, who on earth is going to teach the wananchi down there that corruption is bad? I am afraid that we are not, no matter how loud you may think we are on social media and other places, and no matter how swashbuckling we are reputed to be as a people, the reality is that the bulk of our people follow examples. And the examples are not just your political leaders, the examples are your church leaders, the examples are your community leaders. And that's why you had me in my answer, or rather not focusing on the bottom. I didn't focus that much on the top, but it's got to be people saying this can change. And I remember, and I speak as one who has been tormented by commentators, social media opponents, terribly over the last 5-6 years, ever since I went to the board of Kenya Pipeline and decided to change. I am very proud of the fact that from being seen as as I said earlier, the belly of the beast, which, as one headline had it, the home of old school corruption in Kenya. Kenya Pipeline is now the government's star parastatal, the one that churns out money, not as large as Safaricom, but certainly in the same direction, the one that relied upon, as the CS for the National Treasury told me, whenever he sees the CEO of Kenya Pipeline, he bursts out into a smile. Whenever he sees other CEOs, he knows they're coming with hands held out. And why did we do that? How did we do it? We did it because we made it clear that, number one, we at the top would, very few, maybe 2 or 3 at the time anyway, at the top, at the beginning anyway, would not tolerate corruption. We would take the stakes, we would be beaten up, we would be hauled before. I have been summoned more than 10 times to Parliament. I have made statements at the DCI, I have made statements at the ECC, I have been pilloried from pillar to post, but I stood my ground, and we see the impact. Now, you may say that's small, and it is small. It's only a very small corner of Kenya. But I make that point not to show you that I am the knights, the gallant knights that the country needs or needed, but to make the point that we are, and I repeat this, and I am prepared to be challenged on it, we are very hierarchical and very driven by what we see as examples from the top. And it's not just because we are Africans who came from, chiefly societies and what have you. It's because the colonial state was a very top-down affair. And that, to use that word again a third time, became very much ingrained in our national character. So I am afraid that waiting for the bottom to change, waiting for people to be led from the bottom, I wish it could happen. I am unconvinced it could. And I am more than convinced that it will take some pretty strong, pretty dramatic steps at the top to teach that lesson that corruption is harmful, is deadly, and does not pay. Hopefully, I have not answered you, but hopefully I've given you some food for thought.